It all started May 12, 2019. On 4chan's paranormal board, a user asked people to post disturbing images. Amongst a bunch of unnerving imagery, someone replied with a pretty basic photograph. It was a slightly tilted, low quality picture of a room. The walls were covered in a dated yellow wallpaper with faded pattern looking like something straight out of the 70s. The floor was an ugly, damp looking beige carpet. The architecture itself made no sense. There were strange partition walls, corners that led nowhere, and no windows. It looked like the basement of every community center or church. It had no name, but it would kick off one of the internet's greatest cultural phenomena. This is the history of the Backrooms.
Listen in, lean back. Welcome to those artifacts. Cold case tracks, truth gone whack. Mysteries crack. Those are the facts.
So to be clear, the room doesn't actually exist. It was created on a 3D animation program called Blender, the same one we use for many of the animations on this channel. Despite this, everyone who saw this image said it looked very familiar. We all felt like we'd been here before. The most disturbing part was how empty it all felt. There was no people, furniture, windows, anything on the walls, nothing. This created something we call liminal space. A space between what was and what is next. Derived from the Latin word limen, meaning threshold, these spaces, such as empty hallways or airports, often feel eerie, nostalgic, or unsettling because they're stripped of their usual purpose. I think anybody who's been in their high school after hours has had this feeling. It just feels weird. Another anonymous user saw this picture and replied with a short paragraph of text that would completely change the internet. They wrote, "If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of motto yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wander around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you." That word "no clip" is incredibly important here. It's an old video game cheat code term. No clipping turns off collision detection, allowing a player's character to walk through walls, floors, and closed doors, often falling outside the boundaries of the game map and ending up trapped in a dead zone where the normal rules of physics do not apply. Framing it this way almost made real life feel like a video game or a simulation, where at any point you could lean against the wrong wall or walk in the wrong spot and fall through and get stuck in a space like the Backrooms. The concept was terrifying because it weaponized the mundane. There's no ghosts, no demons, no monsters, no serial killers. The horror was entirely psychological. Imagine that, ending up in a 600 million square mile of office space. No escape, no other person, no one to interact with, nothing, no puzzle to solve, just being stuck there. The image and the text were screenshotted, shared on Reddit, Twitter, TikTok, everywhere. It went completely viral. It hit a nerve. Entire generations of people who grown up wandering around dead malls and waiting in a dentist's office and playing those early 3D games looked at that yellow room and felt a deep, uncomfortable nostalgia. We had all been there, even though the place doesn't exist. As the concept went viral, human nature and the internet took over. People couldn't just leave it as a single mysterious room. They had to map it, they had to explore it, and so the collaborative fiction era of the Backrooms began. Fans created the Backrooms Wiki. They decided that the original yellow room was just level 0. If level 0 was the lobby, what lay beyond it? The community began writing thousands and thousands of pages of lore, creating this whole world that was the Backrooms. They created level 1, a massive concrete warehouse with fog and flickering lights. Level 2, a maze of maintenance tunnels with pipes so hot they could burn you. And of course, there was level 37, often called the pool rooms, an infinite interconnected complex of indoor swimming pools and slides with twisted outcomes if you went down the wrong tube. Because an empty room eventually loses its scare factor, the internet did what the internet always does. They added monsters. The community introduced entities. Smileys were in every little dark spot, a formless creature where you could just see the eyes and this evil-looking grin watching you. Facelings were humanoid creatures with no face. They didn't talk, they didn't interact with you, they just stood there watching. And of course, there was hounds, evil demonic-looking creatures that could end you in a moment. The purists argued that all this expansion just took away from the original eerie concept. Originally, the unknown, not knowing what was around the corner, was what made it so scary. Now, knowing what's around the corner and having all these different levels and all these different things watered it down and turned it into another Dungeons and Dragons fantasy horror story movie, which, there's no shortage of. By late 2021, the Backrooms was at risk of becoming a dead meme. It had become too bloated. The lore was too convoluted. Way too many people were joining in and creating their own little versions and little sections of it. It needed a hard reset. And then on January 7th, 2022, a 16-year-old filmmaker uploaded a video to YouTube that would change everything.
Sound, camera,
Rolling.
all right, and action. All right, cut. That was good, guys. All right, that was good. I'm thinking we get a wide angle, and then we're done. Okay?
All right. Yeah. Cool.
Like how much further? Like
A little more, a little more.
that?
Yeah.
Whoa.
The video was titled The Backrooms Found Footage. The creator was a high school student named Kane Parsons, operating under the channel name Kane Pixels. The video started like a standard home movie from the 90s. A group of teenagers are making a silly student film with masks. The camera operator backs up, trips over a tripod, and falls. But he doesn't hit the floor, he doesn't hit the ground. The camera glitches and he falls through the floor, and suddenly he's in a yellow wallpapered maze level 0. What made this so terrifying wasn't just the concept, it was the execution. Much like the original, he built these rooms in the program called Blender. But the lighting, the camera shake, the VHS grain, the messing around with friends, everything, the sound, it was so hyper-realistic that millions and millions of viewers genuinely thought that this was actual live-action found footage. Kane Pixels didn't just animate a guy walking through hallways. He brought the physics of the backroom to life. The fluorescent lights hummed with the terrifying physical weight. The camera autofocus struggled to adjust to the endless repeated walls and geometry in the overwhelming yellow. And Kane did something brilliant. He ignored 99% of the Wiki lore. He threw out the thousands of levels of catalogs of monsters and pools and all that nonsense. He brought it back to the original terror of the mono yellow maze. But he did add one single scary entity, a frantic screeching wire-like creature that chased the cameraman through the impossible architecture. The video exploded. It gained tens of millions of views in weeks, but Kane wasn't done. He was building an entirely new timeline. Over the next 2 years, Kane released a highly produced serialized story. He introduced the Async Foundation, a massive shadowy scientific research company operating in the 1980s. In Kane's universe, the Backrooms wasn't a glitch in the simulation. It was an artificial dimension created by the Async Foundation to solve the global housing and storage crisis. Kane turned the Backrooms from a surreal creepypasta into a hard-grounded science fiction. He released videos showing scientists in hazmat suits tethering themselves to base camps, mapping the massive layout of the Backrooms. He showed how the dimension was unstable, how it warped reality, and how the architecture seemed to be a twisted, artificial attempt to mimic human environments. This was a massive shift. Suddenly, we weren't just watching victims run from stereotypical monsters. We were watching humanity try to colonize an empty, hostile universe. Kane's series pushed the boundaries of what a single creator could do with 3D software and a really strong imagination. This new direction re-energized the community and created a whole new list of imitators, and it established the Backrooms as internet's greatest mystery. But why? Why does this concept refuse to die? Why are we still fascinated with liminal spaces? Well, look at the world around you. Malls that used to be filled with people sit empty with the growth of online shopping. Office spaces sit empty as well post-pandemic. In the internet, with the insurgence of bots and AI, it has become one big liminal space. The Backrooms is terrifying for what might be in there or what might not be in there. You are either alone or you are not. Either possibility is terrifying.